This is the CEO Incubation Engineering meeting. Street, take it away.
All right, thank you all for joining. The first item is Fred.
Yeah, hello everyone. Sid, I had a question regarding iteration. Because as an SEG, there are many different areas that you need to focus on, like product, documentation, development, research, a bunch more. Which should have the highest priority and which can be picked up at a later stage?
Yeah, so I might not be answering your question. I'd love to dive into examples. Actually, it's super top of mind of me. Like, hey, when can we start offering full pilot to ultimate customers? Think about how we can get there quicker.
Mm-hmm.
I think incubation engineers do more activities, and I'm not sure iteration applies to that. I do think that within a cycle, for example, you make something and you test the code, you write the documentation, you make sure the UX kind of works, and all those things. All those things have to happen. Like, it's not that you can skip one of the steps. It's more that you reduce scope, so you reduce the scope of what you're shipping. So, for example, if you make a new piece of functionality, suppose there's a drop down, or there's a list you want to display, and some sorting. You might opt to only do the list and not implement the sorting functionality yet, but you still kind of update the docs with the new list view. Like, you can't skip updating the docs. I'm sure that doesn't completely answer your question, so happy to try to answer more. Where do you want to go?
It somewhat answers it. I mean, it's something that I struggle sometimes with because there's so many different things that I need to work on as well. It's like different languages, different aspects, like the Visual Studio extension is very different than the Ruby API, for example, and also very different than Flowpilot. So I kind of feel like I have to do all of these things at the same time, and I'm struggling a bit with keeping up pace by applying iteration.
Yeah, I can see that the context switching between very different projects is hard. And I think you're on a project that has very high visibility. I heard people say that they're now encouraging people at their, so CEOs or engineering leaders are encouraging the engineers to use GitHub Copilot because they see efficiency go up, effectiveness go, or efficiency of the developers go up. So I think in your case, I'd be open to looking at how we can go faster by spending more money. For example, paying someone in the wider community who's already contributing to the VS Code plugin to help you, so that you don't know, so that you can focus on stuff that only you can do. So I think you're in a bit of a special project where we're willing to spend more money in order to go faster and to prevent you from having the context switch the whole time.
Yeah, well, okay, thanks. That makes sense. I think that does answer the question for me.
Cool, thanks. Sweet.
All right, I have the next one around team-ups. The elements of team-ups, the key elements are decisions, teams, and information sharing, and allowing everyone to contribute to all these three elements. So do you foresee tooling being built around this so that you could, create the engine for future organizations that work with this?
That's a great question. I get that question frequently, and I just made a note to maybe make a blog post. I think working well, like almost all our practices are about using the existing tools better. For example, like, I don't know, use a numbered list instead of a bulleted list, even if the number of items is not significant and they have no hierarchy to each other. A numbered list allows you to say, hey, item 3 or something like that in a call. That's not, you can use like anywhere you can kind of do word processing, you can have numbered lists. So I think I've seen startup after startup developing special tools for working remotely. And I don't think it's needed. It's about using the existing tools in a certain way. And I think the same is true for team ops. It's not about new tools. It's about using the existing tools in a certain way. Now, I do also believe that our values and our communication practices influence kind of what we make in the product, all the way from Camille proposing to integrate CI to some other things. So I do think that influences it, but we're not planning to make a certain tool set for team ops. We do plan to make, like, we have a certification now. We're thinking about maybe a training certification or a trainer certification. So those are things we're looking at and kind of productizing and monetizing team ops, but not through new kind of collaboration tools.
Yeah, thanks for that. Hannes, you next.
Thanks, Ree. Sid, I kind of want to have a bit of an open discussion, if that's okay for you. I want to understand, like, how the CEO, how the CEO thinks about foundational or infrastructure projects and teams, and specifically, I'm interested in projects, or what do you think about projects that have less visibility, that usually are not considered as important, or that have like a long-term plan or need a long-term plan in order to be successful. Concrete example, if we would make performance a feature, like a product feature, a dedicated one across the whole organization, it might be hard to incentivize product managers to prioritize it, right? Because it's not a tangible feature that you see in the user interface or that you can show to someone. It's a bit more subtle. How do you think about those kind of projects?
Yeah, that's a very interesting conversation. Performance certainly is a feature, and right now, I think most top of mind for me is our work in Verify, our CI. I think we're spending time on a CI catalog, which is a good initiative, and we should be doing that. But I see almost no work being expended on making CI faster. And I think if you look at the best-in-class solutions, Circle CI, I think they're faster than GitLab CI in many cases, and I think we should have more focus on that. When I was a developer, I learned that when trying to optimize for performance, it was really important to measure. Typically, things that I thought would have a big impact didn't, and vice versa. So I think talking about a specific example, I think it would be great to have a continuously running benchmark where we have an account on Circle CI and we have an account on GitLab.com, and we run kind of the same project with the same tests. We measure over time how it does. And then hopefully we go down from something as complex as a business case to like, hey, look, we're X% slower. And I have an idea to do something next month that might close half of that gap. Well, I think it's a pretty easy thing to say yes to when you have the measurement in place. What do you think?
Yeah, I was just interested because I kind of like was a bit exposed recently to what I would consider more like infrastructure projects than feature projects, and I personally find it hard to argue for something like do a migration from Ruby 2 to Ruby 3, even just looking at the pure technical facts, you might get a new garbage collector, you might get like 20-30% faster request response cycles for free if you upgrade to Ruby. So to Ruby free. I'm not sure if this is true. I'm completely making up numbers, by the way. But let's assume this is true. I would expect that everybody's jumping on that hype train and does everything to immediately migrate our code base to run on Ruby free, because then 30% less infrastructure costs, less servers, faster responses. Everybody should be more happy. But it doesn't seem to be that simple, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of requests from product managers to ship certain features, and people are focused on that. And there's not always enough time to do upgrades. And I think it's hard to give like simple answers there. What comes to mind is WhatsApp, that had very few people running a lot of messaging, and they were one of the first users of Erlang and everything else to do that. On the other hand, I'm not familiar with any details, but everyone is a bit amazed that Twitter has as many engineers as they have for a relatively simple service. And you could use that as an argument against Ruby, but I won't open that one. But it's hard. I'm just you linked a few things. I think that this proposal that you made to use Hotwire, at least that's what I think the proposal is super cool. So I think it's a case-by-case basis. I think they can't say as a company like, oh, we prioritize upgrading dependencies over features or vice versa. It's like, that's why we have product managers and engineering managers to help with those decisions.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I posted like another thing in our document where a former CTO, I don't personally know him, but he posted a series of tweets about large engineering organizations and like what kind of percentage you should invest into your building your platform versus building your features versus investing in experiments. And I think incubation engineering is a prime example for the last 10%, in my opinion. And I was less sure about like how our percentage is, or if there's even a percentage for platform building versus like building new features. What I get from you is we're doing the right thing at the right time, or we're doing the thing that is the most important right now. Is that a somewhat correct summary?
I know. I'm sure we're off in some regards. One pet peeve of me is that in order to reuse our pajamas framework is that you need different code to use it in Vue versus using it in Rails. That seems quite a disadvantage to me. So no, we're not saying we're doing the right thing in CI. I think we should prioritize making it faster more than we're currently doing. And that's just what I see. Like, I'm sure, well, you have a couple of proposals out there too of things we should be doing. But I think that the only way to get there is to keep having these conversations and not get discouraged and make a case for it. And sometimes I think also you're a staff engineer, so you have more discretion. It's sometimes really hard for other people to understand the impact, and we have a dual career paths for that reason. We keep promoting people who again and again make really good calls and have a lot of impact in a small amount of time. So that's one way we mitigate it.
Cool. I guess I come back with hard questions the next time. Or another open discussion. I hand it over to Shekhar.
Hey, thanks. Thanks, Hannes. Hey, Sid, it's nice to meet you. I joined about a month ago, exactly about a month ago. So it's really nice to meet you. So my question is really regarding the server runtime seg and your views and how do you see it evolving in the next 6 months or 1 year? Like what really do you envision for the seg?
I think the current and the short term is pretty clear. Like we want functionality similar to GitHub code spaces and Gitpod on GitLab.com.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. And then what do you see? Like, do you see us offering like a free tier for this? Do you see us this being only an EE product? How do you see this sort of evolving over time?
Yeah, I think the basic code space feels as a C-level functionality. So I think it should be open source. And I think the compute you use for that should count against your compute consumption. So your CI minute, what we now call CI minutes, and we're going to call probably compute minutes in the future.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. So you see people being charged by compute minutes rather than what sort of subscription you have or fixed charge per subscription. That's what you're saying, right? And then do we also expect to give, just like we give free CI minutes, free compute minutes? Is that correct?
I think we have a 400 minutes a month on our free tier. That would make sense to me.
Okay.
But I think we shouldn't spend too much time on that. Let's get something out there that works, and then launch it in the ultimate tier. We can always bring it down to other tiers by doing it, restricting it to the ultimate tier. You're also not going to get overwhelmed with usage from the start. So, and not spend a whole ton of time. I hope we're not spending. I hope we're spending most of our time building the functionality and getting it out there rather than.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to prioritize whether we do things like scaling. Do we prioritize functionality like scaling down, etc., or do we prioritize getting this out there and getting it delivered more? Do we spend more time on deciding how to heartbeat and scale down and some of the more complex bits of it, or do we just prioritize delivery of getting it out there for EE customers first or UE customers first?
There's no EE customers. You mean ultimate customers?
Yeah.
My call would be getting it out there as soon as possible, but being very clear about the work that's still ahead and what's not there yet.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Because the worst you can do is say, hey, we now have the same as everybody else. And then people try it and it works way less good.
Right.
So we don't want that. We can say, hey, we have something that works, but it's really, I don't know, takes a long time to restart. Takes 30 seconds to boot instead of two seconds or something like that.
Yep. Okay, that makes sense. I'm gonna hand it to who else do we have? Is that it?
Sid is next.
Yeah, Sid, you're next.
Cool. I was wondering, we had the launch of Cloud Seed. I was wondering whether we could see an effect on the usage of Cloud Seed because of the launch.
Yeah, I shared this briefly in my update video, but we have a very, very ugly dashboard. We are tracking all the events. The current dashboard on Sisense just lists out the absolute number of event occurrences. All the events are there to create a funnel. So if I share my screen real quick, I cannot because I'm on Linux. So if you click on the link, you will see tables for 30 days, 6 months, a year, and all time. And if I may ask you to just increase the width of your browser so that we see the table and the counts. Yeah, so for example, item number 3 in any of the tables, that's the start of the funnel. That's when the user actually ends up clicking on the project infra Google Cloud. And from there are like various, let's say, end goals. They could, for example, set up a service account. they could spin up a Cloud SQL instance, they could set up a Cloud Run deployment pipeline. So all of these are events listed down, and we are tracking all these events to create a proper funnel. I have the funnel in my head, but I don't have it on a dashboard, so I need to do some work on this.
Okay. Did it increase after the announcement?
We started tracking events around beginning of October. We went fully live 100% on GitLab.com on the 7th of October. And since then, it has constantly been increasing. But I would say that, from 7th till 11th, that is pre-launch, the increase was there, and post-launch, of course, there's an increase as well. But it's just 3 weeks, so I don't know how much of an effect the launch itself or the media campaign has had. I would say let's wait out for more data and see if there is any specific spikes there.
Cool. Yeah, it would be cool to get a graph that's like events per day for some of these. Thanks.
Yeah, you know what I'd love to, one piece of data we don't have there is we have the number of times the pipeline gets generated, but we're not counting the deployment, like how many times the deployment pipeline has been executed. That's an important metric that needs to be there as well.
Yeah, that's a metric maybe to add, but also it'd be good to take one of these and plot it as how many per day for the last 30 days or something like that.
Yeah, makes sense. I'll make a note for that.
Cool. Number 7 for cloud for Jamstack. I was put something in the agenda with Bartek, but this might be a better venue. Is an idea to use like Remix as the kind of the example app for that? Because it seems that all other kind of popular frameworks have have already kind of services that specialize in them. So I thought it'd be fun to use Remix, which is like the up and comer and doesn't have a service yet.
Yeah, sure. Do you want to go for the look of a Vercel-like platform, or Netlify-like platform? Because Vercel is going full on Next.js route. Remix obviously doesn't have a platform.
Vercel does Next.js, and then Gatsby does Gatsby and all kinds of other things. But like GitLab can pick Remix, and then we can later on support other stuff.
I think that would be a great way to go at that. Just, do you want for us to use our Cloudflare account to run it, or do you want users to use their own Cloudflare account?
Yeah, so right now, you say Cloudflare is usable with when you bring your own Cloudflare account.
Yeah.
That's great. Like, let's shout that from the rooftops. That's super cool.
Yeah.
But I think the next step is making it more seamless. Like, if Vercel hosts my next application, like I don't need to get another Cloudflare account, right? They pay for it. Just like we pay for Cloudflare when you use other functionality.
Yeah, I had the impression previously that this wasn't the route you wanted to go in initially, but I think it would be very valuable to go down that route.
Well, I wanted to
just for the feel.
I wanted to unblock you in the sense that I anticipated that getting it out there with your own Cloudflare account would save you a lot of time.
It does. I now have this perfect iterative step where the first step is just getting this blog post out there that this works as of today. Step 2, something that I'm working on right now, is getting that integration a little bit more streamlined, like with an integration that takes care of the tedious steps for you. Maybe use the pipeline wizard to make it easy. And then the third step would be to, integrate into the product.
Yeah. And kind of a couple of ways in which, like, maybe I wanna articulate why this iterative step makes sense to me. I think because you got this out now, you can already share it with the world and get feedback. You can then improve the functionality while we work on the other stuff. So you're already in starting the learning. When you make the request to the rest of the company, hey, I want to use our Cloudflare account to host this, they're going to have a much better sense of what functionality you'll offer and how popular it will be. Because you can already say, well, right now we don't pay for it and it's X popular. I anticipate it will be 10 times more popular when we offer it. But that's a lot better data than I don't know, which would be the case otherwise. So I think just doing it in smaller steps allows you to learn along the way and makes it easier to understand for other people. At least that was the hope. That's why I push you in this direction. Bring your own Cloudflare account first, and now that we have that, we can do.
But it can still be the ultimate goal at some point in the future.
I think it should be, right? Like we should handle that.
I'd love to. Yeah.
Cool. I think we're at time. Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it.